Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. David Fradin joining us here again. He's our president from Spice Catalyst and so much more. Really an amazing backstory. I got to meet him a few weeks ago to learn all about his history and what he's doing. And now he's training and consulting on product and services success. Go to spicecatalyst.com to find out more. In the meantime, let's say welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic and excited to have you back to talk more about your product market training and management and all that you do. So it's kind of hard to say, hey, give us a little overview because you're a man who's done it all, written so many books and has so much going on. But say hello to everyone. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Oh, I teach product management, or I prefer to call it product success and product marketing to major corporations around the world. My number one client is Cisco, and I and my instructors have trained about half of all of their product success or product managers worldwide, including in India and in Europe and in China.
Beautiful. My goodness. You have so much going on. I don't know how you sleep. Do you find time to sleep?
Oh yeah,
You do.
it's
See,
a priority.
some people work on less sleep. I figured you're one of those people who gets like 3 hours a night. No,
No,
David?
yes.
All right, there you go. You froze. All right. Well, good to have you here and excited today to get on board to talk more about, the work that you're doing and the strategy of marketing the products, right? So the importance of values, I know you wanted to kind of introduce in for today's show. Where did you want to start?
Well, in putting together a product market strategy for your product, and by market, I mean that's a place where you go to buy something, like a grocery store. Marketing is the activity involved in getting people to go to that store to buy
Got it.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I've identified in my book that was published by Wiley a couple of years ago, entitled Successful Product Design Toolkit and Management book. And it's available also on Amazon. If you just search for my name on Amazon, all of my books will show up there. So in that book, I've identified 32 key components of the product market strategy. And I thought in this episode, we'll talk about the first five, which is the importance of values, having a vision for the product, mission statement, understanding the customer, which I think is the most important thing. And then with that in mind, what kind of innovation and how can you come about innovation in order to give
Mm-hmm.
your product a competitive edge in the marketplace?
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And by the way, I just want to point out if you are looking for him under spicecatalyst.com, great. But also as an author, Fradin is spelled Fradin, David Fradin. That's how you find the books, right?
Right,
Awesome. And you can go right to the website too. And there's a link there on Amazon as well.
correct.
Now, do you want to start by walking us through, the basics of the importance of values and, the vision? Then we'll get to the mission statement of how we could pursue and market everything. This is, you have a very unique background with all your experience. So just to let people know, you are a distinguished professor. And, we went over last time those 5 keys to product and service success, which we're going to elaborate on now.
Well, in the case of values, when I was researching for my book, Building and Sailing Great Products, which also is available on Amazon, I wondered if values entered into whether or not a company is still around. So I went back to the first Fortune 500 list, which was created back in 1965. And I made a column with all of those companies' names. Then I made a column of whether or not they had values, whether or not they followed those values, and then whether or not they're still in business today. And to my surprise, I found that about 300 of those 500 companies that did not have values, or if they did and did not
Wow.
follow, they were out of business. So it's very critical that you have a set of corporate values that everyone believes in and has discussed and has internalized. So when they go into meetings with other fellow workers at that company, they're all coming from the same place, the same set of values, as opposed to maybe one company like Apple has a positive social contribution and empathy for the customer versus, say, an Ayn
Wow.
Rand set of values, which says make a profit at all costs, and it doesn't matter what you do to the environment and to what you do to your employees. The stock market and the price of the stock would take care of everything else, including your social commitment and empathy for the customer, which generally does not work,
Yeah.
especially long term, as evidenced by those 300 Fortune 500 companies that have gone out of business. I then
Wow.
thought about those values in terms of my own personal career. So I made a little table listing the 25 organizations, for profit and
Oh.
nonprofit, that I've been associated with over my career. Then the first column is, did they have values? The second column is, did they follow those values? And the third column is, did it map into my personal values?
Mm.
Almost without exception, those companies that didn't have values and or did not follow their values, which of course was opposed to my set of values, I was miserable working at. And either I quit and was happy the next day, or I got fired and I was even happy the next day, and I'd call that a mercy killing. But at those companies and organizations that had values and followed their values, like Hewlett Packard and Apple and others, I thrived, got promoted, and was very happy. And a friend of mine who was my property manager for my Maui vacation rental, which you can see the view of
Ooh.
Hawaii in the background behind me. He left Maui, came to the Bay Area where I'm currently residing in the Silicon Valley, and he was interviewing for a job. And I told him about the value story, and he went out on an interview the next day or so. And I said, wait until after they finish asking you all the questions. Then
Mm-hmm.
you ask them, what is your company's values? And if you find out that those values do not map into your personal values, then run as fast as you can away from that job. You just won't be happy there. So one of his interviews he went on, he started talking about values for 4 hours with the potential hiring manager. And he got hired, and he said he's never been happier more in his entire life. So the importance of values is not only for product success and corporate success, but it's also very important for personal success.
Thank you for sharing that. And also, I know you as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, it's good to know the company has values. How does it work when you work for a company? Do you have a whole handbook on it and it's something that you all discuss? Because I've worked for some companies that didn't have those handbooks, and I feel like you get a little lost, if I could say it kindly.
Yeah, well, at Hewlett Packard, they called it the HP way, and at our introduction or being introduced to the company, going to work for the company, the first day of orientation, you spend part of that day talking about the values, and you almost do a round table. You go around the room and ask all of the new employees, what do these values mean to you? And
Mm-hmm.
how do you plan to go about following them so that you internalize it? When I went to work for Apple, they did exactly the same thing. And it turns out Apple, one of the first things they did, their VP of Human Resources, Ann Bowers, who was also the VP of HR at Intel, the chip manufacturer. And I found out later that she was married to Bob Noyce, one of the founders of Intel. She probably got a group of people together at Apple and encouraged them to write up a set of values. And what those values at Apple were is empathy for our customer, our users, achievement and aggressiveness, positive social contribution, individual performance, team spirit, innovation and vision, individual growth and reward, quality and excellence, and good management. And they actually gave everybody a little plaque. I don't know if you'll be able to see it because of the blue screen. There we go.
Okay.
That,
Yep, it's
that we
coming
keep
in
on
and
our
out.
desk.
Aw.
Yeah. So we keep that on our desk, and everybody knows exactly what the values are all the time, and it's right there in front of them. I went to work for one company a few years ago. They didn't have any values, so I gave them a set of values that I had for my previous companies, which is a blend of a few things that I felt were important, plus the HP way and the Apple values. And they say, okay, we'll follow these. I said, well, now we need to have a discussion about it. And he would never set up a discussion. And generally, he did not follow those values in his management of that company. So I was very unhappy there and I quit. And another example of that is Volkswagen a few years ago tinkered with their diesel engine cars to fool the Environmental Protection Agency into thinking that it was not polluting the air as much as it was. And at that time, I said, I wonder if VW has values. So I went to their website, and VW had a very strong set of values listed there, but they didn't follow them in the instance of this cheating over the emissions. And just the other day, I went to VW's website, and there's no mention of values there at all. So not only did they drop their values, but it also caused the value of their stock to drop by billions of dollars. And the reason that VW is building electric charging stations around the world for free is because that's the way they're paying back for the damage they did to the environment by cheating on their decent cars. So that's how important values are to the success of a company and to personal success.
Thank you so much. And if you are just tuning in, we want to remind everyone of your website, how we find you, spicecatalyst.com.
Right. One word, Spice Catalyst.
All right, David Fradin here on the line and talking today here more about the product market strategy he believes in. So the vision, the mission statement, understanding the customer, the innovation is what we're walking through today here. So again, if you are tuning in, welcome to the show, and we're excited to have you. And you can always go back and watch, of course, our first episode when we took an in-depth look at those key products to success. All right, David, what else do you have in mind for us?
Well, then the next thing is to have a vision for your
Vision.
company, for your product. A vision is where you want to go. And then you combine that with your values, and you then have a mission statement. And then once you have that laid down, then the product or service that you choose to develop around will fit into that mission statement and the vision and the set of values. And then the next important thing is to understand your customer. And I do that from understanding what it is that your customer wants to do, why they want to do it, when do they want to do it, where do they want to do it, how do they want to do it, what's standing in their way, how important is it to get that thing done, and lastly, how satisfied are they with the current way of doing that. I the, my philosophy in putting that little structure together is based upon several books, I think, written by a Harvard professor called Outcome-Based Innovation, and then enhanced by a fellow that has a company called Synergem in San Francisco, and he wrote a book called Jobs to be Done. I thought both of those are very useful in terms of providing the 15 unmet needs you have to have so that your product or your service can be successful. You have to find those needs and have your product or service satisfy them. But I found the job to be done still too big of a problem. And an example I use is a few years ago, I was speaking at a conference in Singapore and needed to go to Bangalore the next day in order to train some Cisco product managers. So the job to be done was to go from my hotel in Singapore to my hotel in Bangalore, which was near the Cisco engineering campus that's located there. Well, the things I needed to do that is I needed to figure out which mode of transportation I was going to use to get to the airport, how much it would cost, how long it would take, and then what time I would have to leave in the morning. So I figured all that out. Those are the things I had to do. And why did I have to do them? It's because I needed to get to the airport to catch my flight. Got to the airport, and I don't know if anybody's been to the Singapore airport, is huge. I had no idea where my check-in counter was. So I went to the information desk, which was conveniently right by the front door, and asked them, and they pointed me to the check-in counter. And I'm saying to myself, my phone knows that I'm at the airport. My phone knows what airline I'm going to fly out on. Why can't my phone tell me where to go in the airport? So I went there and they said, to make a long story short, they said, show us your ticket to leave India. And I said, well, I'm first going to be speaking to different companies like Samsung and Philips and others. And my agenda has not been finalized yet by Manipal University, which
Mm-hmm.
was sponsoring those speeches. So I don't know when I'm leaving. They said, you can't go unless you can prove you're going to leave. I said, trust me, I don't want to become one of those 1.3 billion people in India. Trust me, I'll leave. No, you can't go unless you prove you're leaving. So then I had to buy a ticket to get out of there. And they say, well, you can go over to Terminal 1, which was, I think, like a mile away. And I said, I'm not going to walk all the way there from Terminal 2 and then all the way back to go to a travel agency. And then they said, well, you can buy it online. So by that time, I was hungry. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning. So I went up to the mezzanine and sat down in a restaurant and tried to call up the travel website to buy a ticket. When I started to do that, I needed to access Wi-Fi, but I needed
Hmm.
to get the password. In order to get the password, they were going to text me the password. Well, I had bought an eSIM when I landed in Singapore. It was supposed to work in that country, and it didn't work. So there's no way I could get a text with the PIN number so I could buy a ticket proving I was going to leave India so that I could go to India and fulfill my obligations. So then the waitress says you could go back to that information desk, which was all the way on the other side of the terminal, and they'll give you a password. So I had to go through all that. Well, my phone knew that I was going to India. The airline knew I was going there. Why couldn't they tell me I needed to have a ticket to leave before I could go and so forth? So those are all the things that one discovers when you understand what it is that the customer wants to do and why they want to do it, when they want to do it, where they want to do it, how they want to do it, what's standing in their way, how important is it to get done, and how satisfactory is the current way of doing things. And of course, in my little story, most of that was not very satisfactory because my goal was to get through security, go to the business class lounge and have a free breakfast as opposed to, in this case, having to figure out everything while I was trying to have breakfast.
Wow. Multitasking, right? Never
Yep.
stops.
So the key then is once you have that understood, and the
Then,
reason then you go on to do innovation. And there was
okay.
a guy by the name of Henry Ford that
Ah,
wanted
yeah.
to innovate and come up with a cost-effective car. And the story is that he went out onto the streets of Dearborn, which is not far from where I grew up, and he asked people, "Would you like to have a car?" And they said, "No, I want a faster horse." Well, if he had just observed people riding their horses through town back around the late turn of the century, they he would have noticed they were whipping the horse in order to get from one part of town to another part of town. And that gets to the point that people can't tell you what they want or what they need, but they can show you, and you can learn by observing what it is that they want to do. So you observe first, interview them second, third, do surveys of a representative sample of the personas you're going to target in your product market strategy. And then you can project what your potential sales are, what your cost of development, and what your return on investment might be, which is good to not only get your product funded internally, or if you're trying to do a startup or
Mm-hmm.
an entrepreneurial type thing, you can then have the data necessary to show your prospective investors that their investment will be successful. And that's the beginning of innovation, which is called design thinking. And you observe what others are doing. You then innovate and you test, and then you innovate some more and improve, and then you just continue in an agile type of fashion until you've perfected the product. Then you put it out on the marketplace.
Well, also, just to point out to everyone, I want to remind everyone, David Fradin here, hailing from us today live, as he always does. Not from Maui, but that is the picture behind him, if you could see. You're in Los Gatos, California, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. And Spice Catalyst is the name of the company, and he's joining us here today. Again, as you hopefully you've been listening, to talk about the product management, the marketing training, and all the consulting that him and his company can do. Also, as an author, he can be seen also speaking on many stages. He clearly has a knack for this, and we're going over the marketing and professional development today here on the show. SpiceCatalyst.com. Don't forget. And let's go back now to our topics of the day, which we're working on the product market strategy, just talking about innovation. And we did our importance of values, our vision, mission statement, understanding the customer, and innovation like Henry Ford. Didn't know you grew up so close to him.
Yeah, I was very close. And in the 50s, when I grew up in Detroit, is sort of like Silicon Valley. A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startup businesses, a large influx of people from the South that came there for the good jobs and the good living environment. And Silicon Valley is very much like that, except it got started really big in the 70s and in the 80s.
Now, as far as we still have there's only 5 minutes left in the show. But what other aspects of, your company helping to market themselves, your expertise in this, would you say is valuable for our listeners to know today?
Well, what I'll talk about in the future episodes of this is the other major components of the product market strategy, which are personas. That's understanding who your customer is. And if you're a business to business company, then understanding the businesses that you're going to target. Then doing the market and competitive research, understanding the status of the market and how quickly the market is going to adopt,
Yeah.
and then go through some technological insights through 16 massive changes that will be occurring, like climate change, like pandemics, like artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and so forth, out of which you can, if you have a current product, you got to make sure that these perfect storm things are not going to affect your product. And they also offer opportunities for new products and services. Then we'll talk about product positioning, which I think is the most important thing, and the state of the mind, position of the mind for your product. We'll talk about then calculating total available market, coming up with a market penetration strategy and a distribution strategy. And I'll give examples for each of these. And then we'll go out and talk about the process, the product lifecycle framework, the digital transformation that's going on in many companies. I was retained a few years ago by SABIC, which is the state-owned plastics company of Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow.
And they wanted to go through a digital transformation. So a design engineer is trying to figure out what plastic they would use, would go to a book that Sabic would put out and look up the characteristics of the plastic that they might want to design into their product and then buy Sabic's plastic. Well, Autodesk, which does computer-aided design software, incorporated lists of plastics and their characteristics in their design
Okay.
software, and Sapik was not one of them. So anybody that was designing a new product with an Autodesk product were picking the Sapik's competitors. So they had to learn how they could possibly go through a digital transformation and get into the computer-aided design programs of other companies in order
Wow.
for the product to be specified in for the new product development. I'll then talk about the customer journey and understanding the customer journey, the impact of social media on the marketing and the design of products, and understanding who makes the decisions, who needs to be informed, who's the driver, and who's the approver, DAISY chart in order to make decisions about your product. And then lastly, in that area, the getting the information available in order to make informed decisions.
Beautiful. And your value system at Spice Catalyst, do the best job you can, try hard, work hard, but take time for your family, for yourself and your family, right?
Yep, and have fun.
Ah, I didn't know that part. All right, good. And if we want to reach out to you, remind us how we do so and where we could pick up the copy of your books.
You can go to Amazon and just search for my name, David Fradin, and all of my books will be showing up there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, for joining us, and looking forward to our next conversation. Are we back on, is it next week?
Yes,
All right, so that's product market strategy continued. We'll work on that. Thank you so much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day. How's the weather in California right now? Probably really nice.
perfect. 72 degrees, clear skies, no fires.
Oh, thank goodness. Chilly 50 something degrees here in New York. Looking forward to next week, David. Thank you so much.
You bet.
All right,
See you
have a
then.
great day. Bye-bye. And to all of our listeners, stay tuned. We'll be back for more.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.